I'm Dragan Potočnik, a professor of history, Department of History at the University of Maribor, Faculty of Arts. My field of research is modern history of the 19th and 20th century. The topic of my PhD was the cultural events in Slovenia during the period between the First and Second World Wars. For this reason, I will tell you something about the cultural history of Slovenia. My lecture will, of course, be quite transparent. I would like you to get to know our country, not only in terms of cultural events, but also in general. I hope you will be also visited. By the way, I visited your country years ago. I'm fascinated by beauty and rich history. I travel a lot, and I have to say, I find that many people don't know where is Slovenia. Because before I talk about the cultural history of Slovenians, I will briefly tell you some important information about our country. Slovenia is a country in Central Europe. It's bordered by Italy to the west, Austria to the north, Hungary to the northeast, Croatia to the southeast, and the Adriatic Sea to the southwest. Slovenia is mostly a mountainous and forested country. Lies in the south of Alps, it is heavily covered with forest. Slovenia covers a little more than 20,000 square kilometers and has a population of 2.1 million people. Slovenians constitute over 80% of the country's population. Let's go to see how is ethnic composition. Slovenians are more than 80%, Croats, 1.8 Serbs, Muslims, including Bosniaks, Hungarian, and Italians. The official language is Slovenian language, which is also the language of instruction at all levels of education. In ethnically mixed areas, Italian and Hungarian communities in ethnically mixed areas have the right to education in their own language. Some more geographical information. I would like to say something about how is situated Slovenia, where Slovenia is situated at the crossroads of Central and Southeast Europe, touching the Alps, Adriatic Sea. I said before, Slovenia is a mountainous country. We have also Adriatic Sea, karst, and Pannonian Plain. Me on the bike, I'm an enthusiastic cyclist. I have to tell, I have cycled some extraordinary tours, for example, from Cairo to South Africa, from China back home, and Pakistan, maybe one day also Armenia. The capital of Slovenia is Ljubljana, but let's go first to see how is climate. Has a continental climate, a Mediterranean climate on the coast, and a mountain climate in the mountains. The capital and the largest city is Ljubljana. Throughout history, Ljubljana has been influenced by several cultures, as it was at the crossroads of German, Roman, and Slavic nation. their languages, customs, and habits. Maribor, the city is the informal capital of Slovenia's Styria and represents the economic, financial, administrative, educational, cultural, health, trade, and tourist center of northeastern Slovenia. The city is close to the Austrian border. In the past, there was a strong German influence. The majority of the city's pre-World War I population was German. Only after the First World War, when the city became part of the kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, did the ethnic composition change. I will not talk about history. I will only mention that at the same time we can already draw conclusions about the culture throughout the history of our nation. The Slovenes were a South Slavic group that settled in the region in the 6th century AD. During the 7th century, the Slavs established the state until Charlemagne defeated them in the late 8th century. The following events are important for the 16th century: the appearance of the Reformation, peasant revolts, and Turkish invasion. This is the time when Slovenians get the first book in the Slovenian language and when the country is shaken by wars. Despite the Reformation, most of Slovenia remained Roman Catholic. Most of area where Slovenians live ruled by the Habsburg. The actions of the Habsburg ruler Maria Theresa are very important for Slovenian history. Its reforms included many reforms. They also reached the field of education and culture. In 1867, the dual monarchy of Austria-Hungary was established. The area inhabited by Slovenians became part of this new monarchy. Following the defeat and collapse of Austria-Hungary in World War I, Slovenia declared its independence. It formally joined with Serbia and Croatia on December 1st, 1918, to form the new nation called the Kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes. The name was later changed to Yugoslavia in 1929. During the Second World War, Germany occupied Yugoslavia and Slovenia was divided between Germany, Italy, and Hungary. During the war, many Slovenes fought as guerrilla fighters, partisans, against the Nazis. After the final defeat of the Nazi forces in 1945, Slovenia became one of the republic of the newly founded state of Yugoslavia. Slovenia gained its independence from Yugoslavia in a peaceful way. 1991, Slovenia declared its independence from Yugoslavia exactly on June 25, 1991. With the recognition of independence granted to it by the European Community in 1992, the country began to move economically and socially towards Western Europe. Slovenia joined the European Union and NATO in 2004. In the field of culture, a new era began, an era of excellent possibilities in all areas. And how was the cultural development of our country? Let's go to see a brief overview of the cultural history of Slovenes. The territory of present-day Slovenia has been inhabited since prehistoric times. One of the most important finds dating back to the Old Stone Age. is what is probably the oldest musical instrument in the world, a whistle from the Duje cave near Cerkno city. Experts estimate that the whistle is about 55,000 years old. Carantania, the ancestors of the Slovenes were the Slavs, who migrated to the area of the present-day Slovenia from the area of Carpathians in the 6th century and founded the oldest known Slavic state, Carantania, already in the 7th century, but it didn't last long. The ancient enthronement ceremony of the Karantan princes in the Slavic language took place on the prince stone at Krnske castle during the Karantin area. Culture and art in Slovenia in the Middle Ages. For culture and art in the Middle Ages in Slovenia, we can say folk culture came to life through the creation and transmission of oral tradition. For example, songs, fables, legends, stories, church songs. Boom and folk poetry and storytelling motifs the pagan period at the time of Christianization, as well as the motifs of farm and castle life, battles with the Turks, and legends about King Matthias. In the 11th century, there was also a written and literary culture in the courts of the nobility and in monasteries and church centers. The most beautiful example of a written Slovenian word is Stiška manuscript, with native prayers and devotional songs. In the 13th and 14th century, the first urban schools were established in Ljubljana, Kamnik, Piran, and elsewhere. The Romanesque art style appeared in our country in the 11th and even more so in the 12th and 13th centuries. This is the time of the creation of our oldest churches. Large monastery churches were also built in the Romanesque style, for example, Žiče, Stična, Jurkloster. As an artistic style, the Romanesque style was also established in the construction of castles. In the middle of the 13th century, a new style, Gothic, appeared in Slovenia. Some of our castles also have a Gothic design. Prominent examples of Gothic castles are castles in Celje, Castle Celje, and in Konice, which developed from Romanesque castles. Gothic style was also established in the construction of houses in cities. The most beautiful example of which is the Venetian house in Piran, as well as in painting, especially wall paintings. Also wall paintings, frescoes, Dance of Death in Hrastovlje. The period from the end of the 15th century to the end of the 16th century was marked by Turkish invasion, the development of the city, peasant revolts, the influence of Renaissance and humanism, and the Protestant Reformation. During this time, the first books in Slovenian language were written. But before, look, many monasteries built in, for example, Kartuzija Pletarje, 15th and beginning of 15th century. Renaissance, and this is period of 16th century, and this period During this period, the first book in Slovenian language were written. Primož Trubar, 1550, and the translation of the Holy Bible, Yuri Dalmatin, 1584. This is very important for our history, is the 14th translation in the world. This is the beginning of the development of Slovenian literature, which is one of the pillars of Slovenian national identity. Many people who lived in the cities and even the nobility supported the Slovene Protestants, but the movement against the Reformation was almost completely suppressed. During the reign of the Austrian Empress Maria Theresa in the 18th century, Slovenes made progress in many activities: agriculture, fruit growing, animal husbandry. Primary education began to develop in Slovenia 1774. Her successor, Joseph II, freed the farmers, which was the basis for the economic progress of the Slovenian lands. At the end of the 18th century, Slovenian intellectuals made every effort to bring the Slovenian language up to the level of German and Italian. Many books were published, including a new translation of the Bible, the first scientific history of the Slovenian nation, the first theater, plays, and a newspaper in Slovenian. The Slovenian territory in the first half of the 19th century was marked by, among other things, the French occupation between 1809 to 1813, the construction of the Vienna-Trieste railway, completed in 1857, and the strengthening of national identity, the Spring of Nations in 1848, the first Slovenian political program. Entitled United Slovenia, which demanded national autonomy within the framework of the Habsburg monarchy mass gatherings. The poet Francisco Sharon put the Slovenian language on the map of cultural highly developed nations. He is considered the greatest Slovenian poet. Part of his poem, Zrolica, written in 1844, is the text of the national anthem of the Republic of Slovenia. During the second half of the 19th century, until the 19th century, until the First World War, there were many Slovenian poets and writers who contributed to the preservation of the Slovenian language. We must not forget that this was the time when the majority of Slovenians lived within the Kingdom of Austria and Hungary. They were loyal to the ruler. They demanded that the Slovenian language be equal to the other languages in the monarchy. Before the First World War, almost 6 times more German-speaking inhabitants lived in Maribor than Slovenian-speaking ones. Despite the fact that the Slovenes in the city were economically weak, the Slovenes laid the foundations of Slovene culture in the city. After the First World War, when Maribor became part of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes, many German-speaking residents emigrated. And many families immigrated from Primorska, a region in the west of Slovenia along the Adriatic Sea, which after 1918 80, sorry, which after 1918 became part of Italy. They were most responsible for the varied cultural events in our city during the First and Second World War. With the creation of the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, the Slovenian part became the most developed part of the new country. The possibility of the access to new markets enabled the development of Slovenian industry. The time after the First World War was a time of great progress in the cultural field. Many institutions of national importance were established. In 1919, the University of Ljubljana was also founded. This is the time of flourish of many arts, from literature, theater, singing, culture, to the flourishing of science. During Yugoslavia, after 1945, during socialist Yugoslavia, ideological pressure were also felt in the field of culture. Culture at that time played one of the key roles in the process of Slovenia's independence. After independence, after 1991, a diverse cultural after can be felt. Even such a small place in Slovenia has a library or museum or gallery, but certainly a cultural center. Festivals have also been on the rise lately. The cultural offer has grown significantly over the past 3 decades. Thank you for listening. I hope that the image of Slovenia is a little bit clearer for you, and that you can find a lot in common between Slovenia and Armenia, history and also culture. Thank you for your attention.